recording. Let's go. All right. Hey guys, Walt's here with a nonfiction unit review. So things have been crazy the past little bit after spring break. We had some weather stuff. I just want to make sure we are all on the same page. So the ultimate goal with this nonfiction unit stuff, and go back and watch the video about characteristics of nonfiction for another review. But basically, we're just looking at how authors create personal essays or memoirs with it's a mixture of fact and opinion. In this case, in Living Well, Living Good and the Tucson Zoo, each author has a specific view they hold about kind of how we should live our lives, or how we do live our lives, or just kind of human behavior. And they use very different ways to get that across. And I just kind of want to go over the outline. I put an assignment out there, outline, like memoir outline practice. And you're going to use that same outline to work on your memoir. So yeah, let's break them down. Let's go. Let's see here. All right, Living Well, Living Good is first. So in the nonfiction review for this one, I asked you guys to tell me, like, what kind of nonfiction is this? How is it both a memoir and an essay? In this case, it's a memoir because it does tell a real life story, but it's a little bit different than a typical memoir. A typical memoir is written, it's autobiographical. It's written by the person about a chunk of their life, not necessarily, not the whole life. Not like I was born and blah, 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 and now here I am. It's, like, let's say hypothetically you are a musician and you would write a memoir about your time in a specific band. Or if you are a coach, you would write a memoir about your time with a team or a specific season. Presidents write memoirs about their time in office. So it's usually autobiographical. In this case, Maya Angelou is autobiographical. She is the one writing it, but she tells us a story about someone else. But that someone else is an important person in her life that she learned a lesson from. So she shares a memoir, or a memory rather, in her memoir about a person in a period of Angelou's life. Now, it's also an essay because it makes a claim or argument about how we should live our lives. So this is a key part of an essay is a claim. And that, you could say a claim, you could say argument. Argument is not necessarily one of those things where you are going back and forth with someone and disagreeing with them. Argument in the literary sense here just means a position, a claim. And a key part of this is the idea that you have to defend that claim. You can't just say this is the way it is. You've got to have evidence. So claims, arguments are part of a conversation. It's a two-way street. So you have to anticipate kind of maybe what your reader or your audience would say against your claim. Anyways, that's we'll get there when we get more to rhetoric. Anyway, so in this case, she does support her claim with evidence, but that evidence is anecdotal, and I've got that on the screen there. Anecdotal is evidence from lived experience. It's stories. It's not like she went out and polled people like, hey, according to my statistics, 75% of people in this area say this. She just used the story about Aunt T as evidence for her points. And now, what were those points? So the main idea, the central claim, the argument that she is trying to make is that living well is an art that can be developed. Now, if you've done this and you've submitted it, or if you're working on it and you get something different from this essay, that's fine. This is the central claim that I'm going to be arguing, because you could also argue, I guess, like at the end there, she does talk about money and how money can be used to either liberate or imprison someone. So that could be part of it, the main idea. Yeah. Anyways, so I've got three supporting details, kind of ideas that back up that claim. And there are more than these, so yours can be different. But I went with, hang on.
Valerie George, contact the office, please. Valerie George.
I went with love life and take great pleasure from small offerings. Now, notice that that's in quotation marks. That's a direct quote from the text. And I kind of summarize that there with, like, realize that life owes you nothing, appreciate what you have. That's one way that you can live well, that you can live life as art. Another way is to realize that people who are different from you can become, quote, convivial comrades. Another direct quote, you want to tie these back to the text. You don't want to just say, she says we should get along. What is she actually saying? What specific words is she using to back up her claim? And then I've got live life as an adventure. Don't be surprised when things don't go according to plan. We were, quote, created creative. Yeah. So main idea, live life as art, or living well is an art that can be developed. Supporting details, love life and take great pleasure from small offerings. Realize that people who are different from you can become convivial comrades, and live life as an adventure. So those are her supporting details in that case. Let's go on to Tucson Do by Lewis Thomas. Again, on the nonfiction review assignment, I'm asking you, what type of nonfiction is this? It is also a memoir in that it tells a real story about an experience that Thomas had at the zoo. And this one is told in the more traditional first-person perspective. So it's a story about a memory. He had this experience. He is remembering it. He is conveying that memory to us. Notice how memory and memoir have the same root there. And it's also an essay because he's making a central claim or argument about human nature in this case, and he supports that claim with evidence. Now, he does, again, it's anecdotal. Even though Lewis Thomas is a scientist, he has a medical background, a scientific background. In this case, his evidence is still anecdotal because it's a kind of a hunch he has based on the experience he had. So that's one thing that, going forward in your life, know the difference between anecdotal evidence, not anecdotal, anecdotal evidence, and like fact-based, objective-based, objective evidence that, like scientific research stuff. Okay. Now, oh yeah, and I include the some say part there because he brings in other like anecdotal evidence, what other people are saying. So, again, both of these essays deal with real stuff, in real life stuff, but they don't use facts and statistics to back up their ideas. They use their own personal experience. Okay, so here's the outline for that one. And I kind of, this one was hard to track down because he makes several different points. And the more times I go through this essay, the more I realize that it's not as cohesive as I think the textbook wants us to think it is, because he kind of bounces back and forth. He goes from, I don't want to be a reductionist. I was a reductionist. Otters and beavers. But now let's talk about ants. But now let's talk about humans. I follow his train of thought, but the writing is a little disjointed, I guess you could say. But what I pulled from it is he's basically trying to say humans are coded to be useful and helpful. And so he's got the details from the story that support that. The first one I gave you was Thomas explains how he is coded to find beavers and otters fascinating. So that was kind of the jumping off point for his claim. Then he asserts that his reaction is part of a larger phenomenon or occurrence, and that is that humans are coded to behave in certain ways. So he takes the very specific instance of him going, whoa, beavers and otters are amazing, to I wonder if humans are coded in general for certain behaviors, and we don't know it. And then he gets even more specific because he starts thinking about altruism. And one thing in the read and respond questions, a lot of us are struggling with what he does here. And again, I think it's because the essay is not quite as clear and cohesive as the textbook wants us to think it is. He says explicitly that some people say we should stay away from ants, that they have no lessons for us, right? Or that the lesson that we get from those people is we should be solitary, we should be selfish. It's the look out for yourself kind of attitude. And what he comes back around to is that in nature, people view, and I guess he's meeting other scientists, people view altruism as weakness. Because in the textbook, altruism is defined as self-sacrificing behavior. And in class, we kind of talked about how if you're a lion and you keep exhibiting self-sacrificing behavior by giving other lions all your food, in nature, that might not work out very well for you. But how do you explain self-sacrificing behavior in humans? And he doesn't take it quite as far as I guess he could have, because he keeps going back to ants. But I guess what he's getting at is, if you take, why would a species, like why would humans give up something? Like why would we ever act unselfishly if we want to get ahead in life? And his theory is that we are coded to be useful and helpful, not necessarily because it's the right thing to do, but because that's how you get ahead. He is arguing that like ants in a hive, we get along better and we go farther by being useful and helpful versus aggressive. Saying it that way, I think it finally kind of makes sense to me what he's getting at. And I've read this thing, I don't know, 2 dozen, 3 dozen times. Okay, cool. The thing at the end too, I want to get to this. And he talks about ants thinking the same thought at the same time. And there's the negative aspect of losing your individuality. And he hints at that earlier in the essay. But I think he's going for the more positive aspects. And in class, we talked about this. Can you think of a way that as humans, we all kind of think the same things at the same time? Maybe not like globally, but think about a person on Instagram or Twitter that has millions of followers. Well, if I have millions of followers and I tweet out, think of a yellow kangaroo, millions of people just thought of a yellow kangaroo, like probably at the same time or close to it. You know what I'm saying? So through social media, through all of the ways that we have to communicate as humans, there are lots of ways that we behave like ants, in the sense that we work together towards a common goal, have the same thought processes and that kind of stuff. And it's not a bad thing. Lewis Thomas would say that's not a bad thing. Okay, is that it? Key takeaways. Nonfiction is a mixture of facts and opinions. And it's a kind of a continuum kind of thing. When you have personal essays and memoirs and autobiographies, like, you're not worried about the facts. It's more about the conveying of opinions and ideas, and the facts back them up, but you're not going to fact check. Like, we're not going to fact check Maya Angelou. I'm sure that Aunt T existed. Those events actually occurred, but we get her larger point without going back and being yeah, but did this actually happen? But then you get down to scientific research and that kind of nonfiction, where you do have to back it up with facts that people can fact check and that kind of stuff. Essays, they do explaining work. And it's not necessarily school stuff. You write essays for school. We're going to work on that going forward. But and you've been working on that your entire school career. You have 5-paragraph essays and all that kind of stuff. But essays are primarily there to explain a claim, to make an argument, to express an opinion. And again, facts and opinions kind of mingle there. And memoirs focus on storytelling. Support there would equal anecdotal evidence and that kind of stuff. All right, so what you should do with this video is go back to the memoir outline and fill that out, and then also work, and this also would work for your nonfiction review assignments. After you've read Maya Angelou's Living Well, Living Good, there was a nonfiction review part of that, and then there was the same thing for the Lewis Thomas essay, Tucson Do. And there's some grammar stuff there at the end of those nonfiction reviews that we haven't quite hit home yet. We're going to work on that going forward. But the grammar stuff, I kind of lost the thread on that. So I'm regrouping. Prepare yourselves for grammar. Yeah. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope this video finds you well. And if you have any questions or anything, holler at me through email, walls@mcnary.org, or through Google Classroom. Hope you guys have a good one. We'll talk to you soon.